Amazing teacher comforts crying girl after school, unexpectedly discovering her father was a CEO. Emma's heart raced as she stood in the art studio, surrounded by the faint scent of paint and turpentine. The sunlight filtered through the large windows, casting a warm glow on her canvas, but it did nothing to brighten her spirit. Today, that glow felt like a mockery, illuminating her pain too clearly. She dropped her brush onto the palette and leaned forward, burying her head in her arms. Choking sobs echoed in the stillness, a torrent of grief that had built up since her mother's death. No one understood how heavy the silence was that surrounded her father. His absence felt like an iron weight on her chest, pressing her into despair. Mr. Thompson entered just as her sobs climaxed, his presence an unexpected comfort. He approached cautiously, kneeling beside her with empathy etched into his features. "Emma, it's okay to feel lost," he said softly, his voice a lifeline tugging at her sinking heart. He shared stories of his own failures and vulnerabilities, releasing tales of rejection from galleries that had shattered his dreams. It was as if a door had opened, and for the first time Emma felt seen. His understanding melted away the icy hold of isolation cloaked around her, allowing a fragile connection to form between them. But just as she shared her fears of never measuring up to her father's high standards, of resentment swirling through her thoughts, Mr. Thompson's features shifted. The confusion in his eyes as he learned of her father's identity, a ruthless tech CEO responsible for countless ethical breaches, made Emma's heart drop. She was overwhelmed by the sudden storm of his realization, the weight of it settling like a boulder on her fragile heart. Could she trust him now? The man who had shown glimpses of vulnerability was discovering just how tangled her legacy truly was, casting doubt on their bond. Suddenly, the foundation of their connection felt precarious. "I can't," he began, struggling with the truth. He wanted to shield her from the grim reality of her father's empire, but the storm brewing within him urged him to confront the truth. Emma's breath quickened, her mind spiraling at the thought of being judged not just for her art, but for who she was, the daughter of a man whose reputation clashed with the ideals she held dear. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Fear gripped her, battling against a swell of determination.
She wanted to break free from the chains of expectation, to paint her own future without the shadow of her father looming over her. But as she glanced at Mr. Thompson, uncertainty filled the space between them. His hesitation felt like a question mark hanging in the air. Would he reveal the truth? And more importantly, would she still be seen if that truth shattered her carefully constructed identity? As the weight of their conflicting emotions settled between them, an unspoken tension enveloped the room. Emma's heart hammered in her chest with each passing second. A sense of impending revelation loomed large, one that could either deepen their bond or irrevocably fracture it. With the upcoming exhibition looming ahead, would she finally find her voice, or would the storm of turmoil tear them both apart before she had the chance? Her future teetered on the brink, hanging by a thread that threatened to snap any moment. The pause lingered like a held breath, each second stretching into infinity. Emma forced herself to meet Mr. Thompson's gaze, searching for some clarity in the turmoil that swirled between them. His eyes, previously warm and inviting, now sparked with a flicker of apprehension that was hard to ignore. Would he still support her if he truly understood the chains she was struggling against? Gathering her resolve, Emma broke the silence. You have to understand. My father, he's not what everyone thinks he is." Her voice trembled but held a note of defiance, as if she were challenging the very fabric of her identity, trying to reclaim it. "I don't agree with his choices, and the last thing I want is to be defined by him." Mr. Thompson nodded slowly, absorbing her words, but the turmoil reflected on his face suggested that understanding and agreement were two very different things. Emma felt her heart constricting, as though even this tiny act of honesty was straining against the weight of expectation. "Emma," he began, his voice low, cautious, "it's not just about your father. It's about how you choose to navigate this world. You have a choice." But did she? She had felt so trapped, molded by her father's towering reputation, and now it was about to encroach upon her dreams. The upcoming exhibition felt less like a stage for her art and more like a courtroom trial where her worth would ultimately hinge on her lineage. What if she failed to stand out? What if she failed her father, the man everyone profited from, yet whom she had never liked? A wave of rebellion surged inside her. She couldn't worry about his opinions any longer. "I have to create something real," she stated, firming her voice, buoyed by a flicker of determination. "Something that defines who I am, not who he is." As her words hung in the air, a new sense of purpose began to unfurl within Emma. She allowed her mind to wander through ideas, colors, emotions that she had previously stifled, held captured by fear.
The weight of her father's legacy didn't have to bury her alive. It could be fuel. She could transform it into something genuine, something powerful that spoke to her own truth. "I want to show everyone that I'm more than just the daughter of a CEO," she asserted, feeling the warmth of her resolve. "I'm an artist, and I deserve to be seen in my own light." Mr. Thompson offered a tentative smile. "That's the spirit, Emma. Your authenticity is the most compelling element of your art. Don't let fear eclipse your vision." Hope bloomed in her chest, pushing aside the persistent shadows of doubt. The glimmer of a plan took shape in her mind, integrating her father's corporate world with her own artistic expression. Could she create a piece that challenged perceptions? A piece that juxtaposed her father's empire with her struggles and dreams? The thought ignited a fire inside her that had long been dormant. But the task ahead felt monumental. A confrontation was inevitable, not just internally, but also with her father. She would have to face the man whose empire felt like a fortress built on despair. As she dove back into her work, energized, the canvas transformed from a blank slate into a battleground, shaping itself with bold strokes and vibrant colors fueled by both fear and hope. Emma knew the upcoming exhibition would not just be a presentation of her art, but a declaration of her individuality, a promise to herself that she would wrestle her destiny from the clutches of legacy. Just then, an idea struck her with fierce clarity. What if she used her father's company as inspiration? What if she dared to portray the duality of strength and vulnerability, corporate ambition and human cost? With renewed purpose, she focused on her canvas, letting strokes of paint symbolize her journey. But in the back of her mind loomed the reality of her father's reaction. Would her defiance alienate him or bridge an understanding? As doubts meandered through her thoughts, she realized that the true exhibition was not merely about showcasing her art, but also about unveiling herself to the world, freed from the burdens imposed by legacy. But as she poured herself onto the canvas, a single question lingered in her mind. Was she prepared for the upheaval that would follow? For the storm of confrontation that waited once the truth was unleashed? The thoughts shivered through her, the weight of inevitability pressing down just as heavily as her anticipation for the exhibition. Emma stood before her canvas, the colors swirling together in a chaotic yet beautiful dance. Each stroke mirrored her tangled emotions, the tension between her familial legacy and her burgeoning identity. She had begun tentatively. Every brush mover was laced with apprehension as she wrestled with the enormity of what she was creating.
But with every layer of paint, the rebellion within her blossomed alongside her vision, a fusion of the world her father had built and the voice she desperately wanted to express. Every morning she arrived at the studio, a quiet sanctuary that now pulsed with her frustration and hope. The faces of her peers would often flicker in her peripheral vision, some encouraging, some puzzled, all wondering what would emerge from this unexpected fusion of corporate narrative and personal revelation. Would they perceive the authenticity she sought to convey, or would they simply see the reflection of her father's empire? As her passion intensified, Emma began to share snippets of her vision with Mr. Thompson, who had become a mentor more than an art teacher. "You know, for too long I've accepted the narrative that I'm just an heiress," she confessed during one of their discussions. "But I want to uncover the layers beneath that, how my father's choices shaped not just his life, but mine too." The raw vulnerability in her words shattered any lingering restraints she had around her emotions. "That's a powerful angle," he encouraged, the light in his eyes brightening. "Exploring that tension can reveal deeper truths about identity and responsibility." His feedback became a dichotomy, a blend of a guide who illuminated her path and a mirror reflecting her internal struggles. Weeks turned into days of vivacious creation. A rhythm emerged, lulling her into a state of focused clarity. The thought of the exhibition fueled her even further. Each piece grew bolder, visually questioning the ramifications of being entwined with a legacy that suffocated individuality. Colors collided, lines distorted, but amidst the chaos, Emma was forging her narrative. A declaration that didn't merely seek acceptance, but demanded recognition. Yet the looming confrontation with her father cast a dark shadow over her artistic triumph. Their conversations, usually perfunctory, had begun to feel increasingly strained as unspoken truths swirled around them. His commitment to his empire sometimes seemed at odds with her desire for independence. As the exhibition date approached, Emma could almost feel her gut twist at the thought of unveiling not just her artwork, but the part of her that had remained hidden for so long. Her artistic decisions began to filter into her daily life. She refrained from attending corporate functions with her father, choosing solitude and studio time over the manufactured smile she used to wear. Each refusal emboldened her, peeling back layers of rust that had accumulated through years of compliance to external expectations. One evening, after a particularly long day in the studio, she returned home to discover a package on the doorstep, an invitation to her father's upcoming corporate gala. It weighed heavily in her hands as she contemplated attending. Inside her, a storm brewed. Attending meant succumbing again to his world, while declining would be an act of defiance enshrined in her newfound purpose. As she wrestled with her thoughts, a sudden wave of clarity washed over her. It was time to confront not just her father's expectations, but to firmly embrace her own. She made the choice. It wasn't just about the exhibition. It was about who she was becoming. With renewed resolve, Emma returned to her canvas, filled with a fierce energy. But deep within, a question loomed. Would her father recognize his daughter in her creation, or only see a reckless act of rebellion? And in that moment of introspection, she turned the brush once more, gearing herself for the confrontation that awaited. The true journey began not with the unveiling of her art, but with stepping into the arena of her own life, ready to challenge the very foundation of her existence. Would she emerge victorious, or would the complexities of her lineage ensnare her anew? Emma spent the next few days submerged in her work, the colors on her palette a vibrant representation of her inner turmoil. Each stroke was a release, a visceral expression of her struggle for identity amidst the weight of her father's expectations. She lost track of time in the studio, often emerging only when the sunlight had waned, her mind racing with ideas that refused to be silenced. While brushing on a deep crimson, she found her thoughts drifting back to the gala. In her mind, the image of her father's face surfaced. His well-tailored suit, the confident smile that never faltered, even in crises. A pang of resentment mixed with a hint of longing pierced her resolve. Why did she seek his acknowledgement when it was that very approval that stifled her breath? The question tormented her, igniting a fierce determination to redefine the narrative of their relationship. Mr. Thompson noticed the change in her demeanor. "You're on the brink of something significant, Emma," he remarked one afternoon, observing her intense focus as she layered textures onto the canvas. "But I sense an internal conflict brewing. You can't create fully if part of you is still hesitant." She paused, allowing his words to sink in. He was right. The fear of her father's disappointment loomed larger than any leap into the unknown. Each brushstroke bore the weight of generations of expectation, yet here she was, trying to carve out a space for her truth. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if I lose everything? His approval, the legacy?" Mr. Thompson stepped closer, an empathetic presence. "You're not losing anything, Emma. You're reclaiming your identity. Creating your truth doesn't diminish your father. It amplifies who you are as an individual. Your art can be your voice if you let it." His insight sparked a flicker of courage. The thought of stepping onto the gala stage with her own narrative illuminated her path. But as she considered showcasing her work, doubt crept in. Would her father care to see her struggle? Would he dismiss her as a fool for rebelling against the empire he had built? The night of the gala arrived, the air alive with excitement and dread. The decision not to attend gnawed at her as she donned her dark attire, a deliberate choice to contrast the dazzling world awaiting her. Standing before the mirror, she adjusted her hair, scrutinizing the reflection. The girl staring back held potential, the potential to confront the legacy or to allow it to consume her. Emma arrived at the venue, the clink of glasses and laughter echoing in the grand hall. A surreal atmosphere enveloped her, designed to impress, yet suffocating in its familiarity. She scanned the room, spotting her father engaged in conversation, his authoritative presence as magnetic as ever. A wave of unease washed over her, twisting her stomach. It felt as if the walls were closing in, a stark reminder that she was just a performer on a stage built by someone else. As guests mingled and admired what they perceived as his success, Emma felt increasingly invisible. She fought the urge to retreat, compelled instead to observe the disconnect between their worlds. This wasn't just her father's empire. It was a gilded cage for her voice. "Emma!" His voice rang through the crowd, pulling her from her reverie. He approached, a genuine smile lighting his features, temporarily masking the impending storm she could sense brewing beneath his cordiality. "You made it." "I did," she replied, her tone fortified with newfound resolve. "But I wanted to talk with you." "About?" His brows knitted, a flicker of concern shadowing his face as they stepped away from the noise. Those simple words hung between them, pregnant with implications. She could feel the pulse of her choices thrumming in her veins. This was her moment. "I want to share something with you. My work, my vision. It's about more than just the inherited legacy," she explained, her heart racing. "It's about me, finding who I am beyond the titles." His expression shifted, the flicker of surprise mingling with expected skepticism. "But this is our life, Emma. The expectations are for your own good." "Are they?" she blurted, her voice firm despite the tremor within. The tension snapped in her chest. This was the confrontation not just with her father, but with the very norms she had internalized.
You've built an empire, but I'm not a placeholder in it. I want to be seen." Silence enveloped them, filled with unspoken fears and revelations. In that pause, something shifted. A possibility emerged far more potent than either had anticipated. Emma remained steady, her fate now hanging finely between the father she knew and the daughter she was becoming. Their eyes locked, and for the first time, the foundation of their relationship felt on the verge of transformation.
So, salmon does have iron in it, but it's not a lot. There's better sources of iron. So, in a world defined by his choices, she took a breath and prepared to unveil the truth that might either liberate or shatter the very fabric of their connection. Would her father embrace this version of her, or would the fractures of their legacy widen irrevocably? In the thick silence that followed Emma's bold declaration, an unseen rift crackled between them. She could feel the weight of expectation and tradition pressing on her shoulders, an anchor drawing her back into the depths of conformity. Her father's face twisted through various expressions: confusion, disbelief, and something that looked like hurt, all flickering in a matter of moments that felt like years. "Emma," he began, his voice low and steady, but she could hear the tremor beneath. "You are too young to understand the full implications of what you're suggesting. This is not just about you, it's about our family, our legacy." A rush of defiance surged through her. Each word he spoke felt like a shackle being wrapped around her heart. "But I'm not a piece on a chessboard, Dad. I'm a person with dreams and aspirations that don't have to revolve around your vision." The intensity of her feelings spilled out. She could hardly catch her breath, but the fire inside her demanded to be heard. His brow furrowed deeply, and she noticed how he shifted his stance, as if bracing himself for her words. Emma took a step closer, her heart racing. "You've built an empire, but I want to create something for myself. I want to inspire others, not just follow in the footsteps of the past." "Your art?" he asked, skepticism threading through his tone. "It's a hobby, Emma, a passing phase." Those words struck her like a blow. Was that all it was to him? A fleeting fancy? She took a moment, grappling with the disappointment that bubbled close to the surface. "It's not just a hobby, it's my voice. I spent years conforming to what you wanted me to be, and it's left me feeling hollow," she replied, her voice steady. "Art can change lives. It can challenge, transform, and even heal." "Do you really believe that?" he countered, an edge creeping into his voice. "You think this industry is forgiving of dreams?" At that moment, she understood that they were not merely discussing her artistic passions. They were confronting the very nature of their relationship. He was grasping at threads of control, attempting to weave them around her once more. She had to break free. "Yes, I do believe it," Emma exclaimed, her fear morphing into fierce determination. "More than anything, I need this, not just for me, but to assert my place in the world." The crowd continued swirling around them, oblivious to the consuming storm brewing in their corner of the hall. "I thought you were satisfied with your role in the company," he replied, a defensive front forming. "You could become successful in your own right, in ways I have made possible for you." "Success should not be defined by your metrics," she snapped, the steel in her voice surprising even her. "I refuse to live a life defined by someone else's vision of success. I'm not going to be the daughter you want. I'm going to become the woman I need to be." The silence hung heavy between them, fraught with unspoken fears and the realization that this confrontation had pushed them further apart than Emma had ever imagined. She felt the ground beneath her feet shift, a seismic wave of truth crashing against the foundations of their familial bond. His gaze finally softened, the mask of authority slipping just enough for her to catch a glimpse of the father behind the businessman. "And what if you fail?" he asked,
his voice barely a whisper, but the question drummed loudly in the air between them. What if this dream doesn't take you where you want to go? The fear churning within her matched his intensity. Then I'll fail on my own terms, she responded, soul laid bare. But at least I will know I tried, truly tried to embrace who I am. A contemplative quiet enveloped them, a bridge forged not through consensus, but through the battle they fought in the open. They stood at a pivot point, both terrified and tantalized by the thought of what lay ahead. As the gala continued around them, the outside world felt distant, irrelevant even. Emma sensed the divide between them shifting like a tide, one that could not be easily redirected. Would this be the moment that defined not only her path, but also the trajectory of their relationship? Just as she readied herself to break the silence, to push the conversation further into uncertain territory, she noticed a renewed fire in her father's eyes. Not the fire of anger, but a flicker of understanding, as if he was finally beginning to see her. "Emma, he started uncertainly, before his words caught and faltered. The impending revelation hung in the air, pregnant with potential. Would he understand her, or would they remain trapped in the cycles they had known too well? And with breath held, she waited, poised on the brink of a conversation that could redefine everything. The moment of truth approached, and the outcome remained shrouded in uncertainty. Emma's heart raced, pulsating with fear and anticipation as she held her breath, waiting for her father's next words. The air around them felt charged, a tangible tension that threatened to unravel everything they had built together. Did he sense the gravity of this moment? "Emma, he started again, struggling against the tide of his own emotions. But in that moment of hesitation, something within her tightened, the ache of vulnerability filling the air like a heavy fog. It was not just about her dream. It was about the uncharted territory of confrontation and the possibility of radical change. Still, the hesitation gnawed at Emma, a ripple of doubt threatening to shatter her newfound resolve. Was it too soon to expect understanding? Perhaps her father was still anchoring himself to their family's expectations, still unwilling to see the world through her eyes. "I can't make you see my vision, Dad," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper, yet steady. "But I need you to understand why this matters." "But what you're suggesting is a leap, a risk," he replied, faltering on his commitment. The concern in his voice was palpable, mingled with a fear that struck her as paternal. A leap off a vast cliff. "What if that cliff is my freedom?" she countered, the words exploding forth from her frustrations. "What if it leads me to a horizon I've only dreamed about? Isn't that worth exploring?" For a moment, the flicker of hope ignited in his eyes flickered out. "And what if it leads to failure, Emma? You could lose everything, everything we've built." The underlying threat of loss hung between them, a wall of fear that Emma needed to dismantle. "That loss is mine to face," she insisted, a visceral determination coursing through her. "Isn't it worth the chance to be authentic, to express who I truly am? I need you to trust me to navigate my path." The world around them began to fade, the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses muting into a dull buzz as the reality of their exchange consumed her attention. Emma noticed that even the spotlight above them dimmed as time slowed in anticipation, waiting for him to respond. "I've always wanted you to be safe, Emma," he said finally, his voice breaking slightly. "All I can think of is how difficult this industry can be, and how people will tear others apart over a single misstep. But I won't know what I can stand against if I never try," she stated, pushing back against his fears. "I can't become the artist I dream of if I confine myself to the expectations of an empire I didn't build." Those words seemed to resonate within the stillness of the moment. She could see a deep contemplation flicker across his face, his barriers slowly crumbling. It struck her just then that their confrontation had been about much more than art. It was a battle for recognition, for familial acknowledgement that she was real and that her dreams carried weight. "So, every risk carries something worth fighting for?" he murmured, almost to himself, lost in ruminations. "Yes, Dad," Emma replied, a thread of hope weaving through her voice. "Every single one. If I fall, I want my fall to be mine." The weight between them began to shift. He stood at the edge of understanding, wrestling with the urge to cling to his old ways versus recognizing her autonomy. Hope blossomed like a fragile flower breaking through concrete. At that moment, he shifted again, his posture suggesting a willingness to engage, to navigate this unpredictable landscape with her, their relationship evolving beneath them. "Then let's discuss a plan," he finally offered, the essence of uncertainty mingled with tentative optimism. "If we're going to do this, we need to ensure you're prepared. A strategy that includes everything we could anticipate." Emma felt the leap inside her chest, igniting a spark of exhilaration. "You mean you'll support me?" The gravity of his words was overwhelming, tinged with hope for a connection that had seemed irreparably fractured only moments ago. But just as she began to express her gratitude, his expression clouded with a new storm of worry. "I just want you to promise me one thing." "What?" she asked, tension gnawing at her. "Promise me that if it doesn't work out, you'll be honest about it, and not try to shoulder everything alone. Promise me you'll reconsider your path and come back if you're struggling." His plea anchored her spirit, highlighting the depth of his love alongside the barriers he would need to overcome. The ground was still shaking beneath them, but now it was paved with potential rather than chaos. "Deal," she said, a grin breaking across her lips. As they began mapping out her vision, discussions peppered with skepticism and inspiration, her heart swelled with determination. Yet, lurking beneath, was the nagging fear of what lay ahead. Would her father stand strong by her side, or would their paths diverge? As they spoke, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that their newly forged alliance came wrapped in unseen challenges yet to unfold. And in that fragile moment of connection, she realized uncharted territories could be beautiful, yet terrifically daunting, revealing depths of themselves that they both hadn't fully comprehended. Just as they began to lay out concrete steps, a shadow flickered in the corner of her eye, sending her heart racing anew. There, lurking at the edge of the gala, stood a figure she recognized all too well, a person from her past whose presence threatened to unravel everything. What unexpected revelation awaited as she faced a ghost she thought she had left behind? Emma's stomach twisted at the sight of the figure looming at the edge of the gala. The familiar silhouette sent a shockwave through her, ricocheting off the walls she'd been so meticulously reconstructing with her father. Squinting through the haze of the party, she identified him, Sam, a former classmate whose presence had shifted many aspects of her past. The memories associated with him had been shaped by a collection of aspirations and betrayals, whispering a history that threatened to resurface. "Do you know him?" Her father's voice cut through the fog, laced with concern. She turned back to him, the intensity of their previous conversation a stark contrast to the apprehensions simmering within her now. "We were friends," she finally muttered, each syllable heavy with unspoken fear. "Emma," he pressed gently, "are you okay? We can leave if you need to." She fought against the urge to retreat, but sensed that staying put could be equally suffocating. This confrontation with Sam felt like an involuntary audit of her choices and potential failures that lurked behind each smile and every word spoken in the light of others' expectations. But she couldn't fall back into that pit so easily. "No, it's okay," she said through clenched teeth. "I need to face this." Her heart pounded in her chest as she steeled herself, moving toward the shadow that loomed closer. Each step felt heavy, a collection of burdens she had tried to leave behind. Was she ready to confront this fragment of her past? She had shed so much skin to become the person she was, but remnants of doubt clung to her like an unwelcome perfume. "Emma," a voice called out, quiet but sharp. She stopped midway, recognizing the depth of pain lacing Sam's tone. "Is that really you?" The familiar unease washed over her like a cold wave. The urge to explain herself, to distance who she had become from who she was under his scrutiny, surged within her. "What do you want?" she asked, noting the tremble in her own voice. "I came to see how you're doing," he replied, taking a step closer, revealing a sincerity that made her hesitate. "I heard about your plans. I know how hard you've been working." Each word felt like a reminder of shared histories where they had both soared and fallen. Could any shred of their past truly matter now, amid her resolve and aspirations? "Why should I care what you heard?" she shot back, her defenses rising. "You were never in my corner before." The reprimand stung, but beneath her fractured tone, she noticed a flicker of acknowledgement on his face. "I wasn't, and I don't expect you to forgive me. Just don't dismiss what you're capable of, okay? You've got something special." Emma felt the connection disintegrate, yet his words clashed with her inner dialogue. Did she still measure her worth in others' perceptions? Could she take his praise and regard it as anything other than pity? Frustration bubbled to the surface. "You think I want your validation? I made a promise to myself to be authentic, to work for it. I'm done needing anyone's approval." But deep down, she realized it wasn't just Sam's presence that fractured her newfound strength. It was the echo of her past choices that haunted her, a looming specter reminding her of unfinished business. She needed to confront those shadows and, perhaps, extending the same grace she sought from her father. As she met Sam's eyes, she felt something unexpected bubble within her, a path to understanding that transcended animosity. "I'm moving on," she asserted, softer this time, yet resolute. "And maybe you should too. Let me become who I am meant to be." His gaze seemed to soften, and an unspoken truce flickered into existence. "I never doubted your talent. I just never acknowledged it," he said quietly. "That's why I'm here now." Their souls momentarily bridged by a shimmer of mutual respect, Emma dared to step forward, reclaiming her agency. "Then don't hold me back." With each breath, she felt a release of pressure, a wave of clarity washing over her tumultuous emotions. This moment was a revelation, one rooted in her own growth and the realization that she could chart her course, unshackled by the misunderstandings of her past. Still, standing on the precipice of potential, a question loomed larger than all the others. What if she failed, not just in front of those she had distanced herself from, but in her own vision? Emma's heart nodded again, twisting with uncertainty. Yet a voice, her own, persisted, reminding her that paths diverge for a reason. The past could indeed fade, but it also required closure to allow for new beginnings. Just as she turned to walk away, a silhouette emerged from the crowd, an old mentor she had admired, with an eager expression and an offer that could reshape everything she thought possible. Was the universe aligning, or was this yet another complication to navigate? Caught between her burgeoning dreams and the specters of her past, Emma felt her resolve strengthen. But the impending choices loomed larger with the mentor's approach. Could this lead her further into uncertainty, or would it solidify her future? Emma's breath caught as she locked eyes with her mentor, Professor Larkin, a figure whose opinion had once weighed heavily on her developments, but whom she hadn't seen in years. Encouragement poured from his gaze, igniting a flicker of hope amid the doubt that still clung to her edges. "Emma," he began, his voice steady and warm, "I've been following your journey. Your presentation at the conference was remarkable." The compliment landed softly, and yet its weight was heavy, both validating and intimidating. "Thank you, Professor. It's been a lot of hard work," she responded, careful to keep her tone measured. Inside, she felt strings tightening, a blend of nostalgia and a new yearning for clarity. Hard work pays off, but it also reveals true potential, he continued, gesturing toward a quieter corner of the venue, beckoning her to step away from the clamor. As they moved, Emma tried to shake off the remnants of her conversation with Sam, but his words echoed, merging with her mentor's. What did her potential truly mean? Was it about fulfilling expectations from others or crafting her own identity? Satisfied with their distance from the party's chaos, Larkin leaned slightly closer, lowering his voice. I've seen many students stagnate in the face of their pasts. Don't let fear of failure hinder your growth. Embrace your journey fully. She wanted to believe those words wholeheartedly, yet a new layer of vulnerability laid bare before her. It's hard to forget the past, she admitted, pushing through the tension inside. I thought I had moved beyond it, but... You're human, Emma. Acknowledging our past is an integral part of moving forward, he said incisively. Engaging with it allows you to transcend it.
His understanding cut like a knife, raw and poignant. The weight of her story, the dreams she harbored, and the failures she feared were coiling tightly within her. She knew he was right. Facing her history was imperative for her development. "What if I don't have what it takes?" she whispered, half to herself. "Now you're asking the wrong question," Larkin replied, his voice unwavering. "It isn't about whether you have it in you, but whether you cultivate that potential. Success isn't linear. It's about resilience, the ability to rise and learn from every setback." His reassurance contrasted sharply with her earlier insecurities, illuminating a path she hadn't fully recognized. She felt an unseen door creak open, revealing possibilities she'd underestimated. "Do you really think I can?" she challenged gently, searching for a flicker of hesitance in his certainty. He smiled knowingly, as if holding a secret only she could unlock. "I don't just think it, Emma, I've seen it. You possess a fierce determination. It's your time to claim it." A warm flush of gratitude mingled with anxiety coursed through her. His faith was weighty, yet it galvanized something within her. She had to stop resenting her past and instead embrace it as part of her narrative. Feeling surges of newfound courage, she vocalized her inner commitment. "Then I will. I'll find a way to leverage this doubt into my strength." Larkin nodded, his encouraging demeanor reinforcing the promise she made to herself. "There's an opportunity arising with a new project I'm leading. Your insights could be valuable. Are you interested?" The proposition stirred excitement and fear within her in equal measure. A project that linked her with someone she admired deeply felt like serendipity, yet deeper involvement meant confronting more than just her abilities. Her heart raced at the thought. Was she ready to take such a step, diving deeper into uncharted waters of her potential and all the uncertainties that came with it? "I need to think about it," she replied, hardly believing she could hesitate now when she was so close to seizing her aspirations. "Take your time. Just remember, the greatest risk often leads to the greatest rewards." As she turned the conversation over in her head, Larkin's figure began to dissolve into the vibrancy of the gala. But his words lingered, haunting yet invigorating, threading into the tapestry of her ambitions as she wandered through the crowd. Navigating the swirl of emotions and possibilities, Emma caught a glimpse of her father once more. His supportive nod felt like a grounding force. She wasn't alone in this. Yet a sudden realization gripped her thoughts. The perfect fusion of her past and her ambitions was unfolding in front of her. What decisions awaited? And could embracing both past and potential cement the very identity she searched for? The future felt at once exhilarating and daunting. Each possibility spun into an intricate dance. Could she truly balance all the shifting dynamics? Emma took a deep breath, resolved to pursue this path and face whatever might lie ahead. But as she turned once more, a whisper crept into her thoughts. Secrets of her father's past watched from the shadows, begging to be revealed, hinting that her journey was only just beginning. The gala sounds faded into a dull thrum as Emma stepped outside to catch her breath. The air was crisp, filled with the electric promise of an early evening. She leaned against the cool stone of the building, allowing the weight of her encounter with Larkin to settle. His words echoed in her mind, reverberating with resonance. Embrace your journey fully. What did that truly mean for her? Doubt clawed at her again. She closed her eyes, fighting through the noise of expectation and self-imposed limits. Each breath pulled in aspirations, the potential Larkin believed in, while exhaling the remnants of her past failures and self-doubt. How could she use her history, not as a chain, but as a catalyst? She crossed her arms, heart racing. It was time to pivot, to confront what she'd buried since childhood. Her father's concealed past tugged at her consciousness, melding into her own identity quest. What if understanding his story could illuminate hers? With that thought, the tension in her chest began to dissipate, leaving room for a clearer vision. The decision to engage in Larkin's project was not just a professional opportunity. It was a fork in the road. Emma felt the pressure of not wanting to repeat past mistakes tight in her gut. But what if diving into this project meant exploring not only her professional limits, but also her lineage? She had crafted a narrative of her life, but Larkin's proposition hinted at a chance to rewrite it with newfound courage. Standing under the moonlight, Emma replayed the details of the night. Larkin had seen potential in her, emphasizing that resiliency came from facing failures head-on. She reflected on her other conversations, especially with Sam, the fears he'd stirred in her, carving spaces of self-doubt. Could she use that unease as fuel? Emma envisioned submitting her name for Larkin's project. With each breath, she transformed uncertainty into determination. How exhilarating to imagine showcasing her insights, weaving her father's legacy into her own blossoming story. Yet, beneath that thrill simmered a fear. Would her past overshadow her ambition? Resolving her path forward became clearer as she recalled her father's quiet strength, the unmentioned tales of ambition and struggles. His absence had left scars, but perhaps those scars offered a framework for resilience. Maybe she could take both her history and her future into account, crafting an identity that would honor both sides. But what if her father's past was darker than she imagined? What if his unspoken experiences held uncomfortable truths? The questions prickled at her, teasing out a complex narrative that could shatter the idealized version of her father that she'd held on to. Could she confront those secrets and still step boldly into her ambitions? A brisk wind swept by, chilling her thoughts like a specter. Emma shivered but smiled, embracing the turmoil within. The thrill of possibility danced with the dread of exposure. That was the essence of growth, a dance between comfort and discomfort. She understood then. To step into this project, she must also prepare to confront her father's shadows. With renewed clarity, Emma turned back toward the building, ready to commit to the leap. Her resolve strengthened with each step, but a nagging fear lingered. What revelations awaited when she finally peeled back the layers? As she re-entered the bustling crowd, the rhythm of heartbeats and laughter enveloped her once more. Yet one thought struck her fiercely. The moment she decided to explore her father's past, she would also unearth her own potential in ways she couldn't yet grasp. But what awaited her in the depths of those revelations? The shadows were just beginning to stir. Emma stood before her completed canvas, the vibrant colors swirling in a perfect chaos only she could define. Weeks of struggle, self-discovery, and bold choices converged onto the surface,
telling a story that intertwined her identity with her father's legacy in a powerful display. The exhibition was set for later that day, and the air thrummed with anticipation. But today marked an unmistakable turning point. She finally felt like an artist in her own right. In those flashes of insight, she had unearthed truths about the corporate narrative her father had constructed and how it shaped her own perception of success. Emma dove deeply into the complexity of her heritage, acknowledging not only the privilege, but also the ethical questions that gnawed at her conscience. Today, her art would mirror her growth, encapsulating the juxtaposition of ambition and vulnerability, one that her father had been wedded to, yet she had longed to escape. Her heart raced, the culmination of her journey blossoming real before her. At that moment, she was no longer the daughter of a CEO. She was her own creator, a force to be reckoned with. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. The one person she had yearned to share this with was standing at the doorway, a mixture of pride and apprehension flickering in his gaze. Mr. Thompson, the mentor who had guided her through confusion and self-doubt, looked over her work with a sense of recognition that grounded her spirit. "You've truly captured the essence of struggle and reclamation," he said, his voice low and brimming with warmth. "This is your voice, Emma. I've never seen anything like this from you before." His validation ignited a fire in her, a mixture of satisfaction and awareness that she had forged not just a painting, but a piece of her soul. "Thank you," she replied, her voice steady yet trembling with raw emotion. "I finally feel like I'm expressing not just my art, but my truth." Confronting the reality of her father's legacy hadn't been easy. It had unlatched doors she had long kept sealed. But now, as she prepared for the exhibition, those shackles felt lighter. Today was about empowerment, about standing in her identity unabashedly. As the moment approached for her to unveil her work, a flood of attendees filled the gallery. Faces familiar and new, their buoyancy injecting a pulse of exhilaration into the air. Emma took a deep breath, aligning her thoughts. This wasn't merely a showcase of her art, but a declaration of independence intertwined with a challenge, one she hoped her father was ready to accept. When she turned to spot her father navigating through the crowd, Emma felt the remnants of skepticism flicker like a tension in the ether. Would he understand? Could he see how she had transformed the complexities of their lineage into something tangible? "Emma," he said as he reached her, a genuine smile forming across his features. "I came as soon as I heard." "Thank you for coming, Dad," she said, her voice steady yet laced with uncertainty. "I want you to see this. I mean, really see it." They stood side by side, her heart pounding against the contours of anticipation intermingled with trepidation. She pointed toward the canvas, words pouring out with fervor. "This is my journey, a blending of heritage and hope. It's my reflection of your world and my fight to carve my place within it." His gaze flitted over the canvas, a flicker of recognition dancing across his features. "It's bold," he replied, the gears of understanding shifting in his eyes, a bridge of acknowledgment built between them. As she spoke, the words surged forth, detailing how their conversations had been woven into every brushstroke, how her understanding of who she wanted to be transcended who he had sought to mold her into. "It's about embracing our past to pave forward into the future," she insisted, a firm, unwavering energy radiating from her. Their exchange rippled through the gallery, catching the attention of nearby guests, each one absorbing the intimate evolution unfolding before them. Emma felt a solid confidence swell within her, retaining her footing within the complexities of lineage while forging ahead to be recognized for her individuality. As the crowd began to react to her work, the applause and accolades summed up the achievement Emma had long sought. Validation was not merely from external forces, but from knowing she had harnessed her struggles into something formidable. A few hours later, after mingling with guests who praised her art, Emma locked eyes with her father once more. His expression had softened, a hint of understanding painted in the depths of his gaze. "I was wrong to think your artistry was just a phase," he admitted quietly. "You've built something real." Her heart filled. This acknowledgement marked a final transformation. He was no longer the empire's unaware architect. He had grown alongside her through this journey. Their relationship had deepened without losing sight of their individuality. Each had conquered their emotional battlegrounds, emerging victorious. In that bittersweet moment, Emma realized she had not just shared her art with the world, she had defined her identity on her own terms, proving that her story was hers to tell, one brushstroke at a time. The shift in their dynamics represented a concrete achievement, an unspoken promise to support and stand with one another sans the weight of expectations. Emma's eyes glimmered with renewed spirit as their bond transformed into one built on understanding rather than control, painting a future where both would flourish on their own terms. As she stepped outside the gallery into the warmth of twilight, Emma knew there was still much to explore, much to confront, and many truths yet to unveil. But the triumph she felt was undeniable. She had achieved a moment where not only had she transformed herself, but had fostered a connection capable of healing and growth. Now, she whispered to herself, filled with an exhilarating blend of anticipation and determination, let's see where this path leads. This was her moment, hers to own, hers to cultivate. A path unfurling before her, a narrative waiting to be explored. Emma was ready for the journey ahead. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. This matters more than you know. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Your voices need to be heard. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. Real fans of personal overcoming stories know the critical importance of your support.